Dave's built a couple Glassairs in his building time. Let's go ahead and move into the presentation. Our presentation tonight is by Dave Prizio. Dave has been a longtime chapter member. He's built a number of airplanes. I think he built one of the Piper Cub lookalikes, a Texas Cub or whatever. One of those. It's currently residing at the bottom of the Catalina Channel, unfortunately.
You would have to bring that up.
Well, yeah. Well, that's an infamous kind of a thing.
Yes, it is.
And that was the subject of a whole other presentation that Dave gave, back when it happened. But yeah. So he can tell you all about that if you want to know. But he has built, I don't know, 3 or 4 airplanes, I think, at least. A couple of Glasstars, I know. He's helped people with their RVs and other aircraft. He is a designated airworthiness representative, a DAR. So when you finish your build of your amateur build aircraft, he can come in, inspect it, and sign it off, make it official to go through your phase 1 flight testing. He also participated in the Home Built Aircraft Council at EAA back in Oshkosh for a number of years, and he contributed heavily to the flight test manual, particularly in converting that from a general flight test manual to a task-based, task-oriented flight test process. So they're working with the FAA now to try to get the phase 1 test flight. Instead of specifying 40 hours or 25 hours, it's going to be based on completing those tasks in that book, basically. That's not approved yet by the FAA, but their EAA is working on that. It'll become at some point, not too distant future, it'll become a task-based test process. He's also a technical counselor for our chapter, and he writes for Kit Planes magazine, and I don't know what else. But he's done a
enough.
lot, that's enough. His wife, I guess, forces him to stay home certain days of the week. He can't do aviation every day of the week. But so yes. I want to thank Dave for getting into this presentation tonight. There was a short article in the one of the recent sport aviation magazines announcing that he had completed this build on this airplane. It's an airplane that he bought as a partially completed project, and thinking it was going to be easy to complete it. And I guess it was a little more complicated than he initially thought. So that's what the presentation is all about tonight. So Dave, why don't you take it away?
Okay.
Remind everybody, mute yourself so you don't, any of your background noises don't get into the presentation. And then once presentation is over, we'll open it up for questions, and then you can unmute yourself and fire off your questions. So Dave, have at it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so we're going to talk tonight about building a Glastar from a partially completed kit. And that's a different experience than building it from a factory kit, which I did. My first plane was a Glastar that I bought from the Stoddard Hamilton, which is eventually absorbed by Glasair Aviation. And that project took, I don't know, about 4.5 years. After that, I built a Sportsman, also by Glasair, and then a Legend Cub, which is the notorious thing dwelling at the bottom of the Catalina Channel. Anyway, Jim's pretty much covered all my stuff here, so don't really spend a lot of time on that. Okay, so my friend Ed Zaleski and I decided that we hadn't built anything for a while, and we were looking for something to do. So we thought, well, maybe we can find one of these kits that's somebody started it, and they just got tired of it or whatever, and want to get rid of it. So, you kind of look through Trade a Plane, Barnstormers, but we found that the best source for a kit, a partially completed kit, turned out to be the Glasair Aircraft Owners Association, which is basically services the Glasair 1, 2, 3 airplanes, this Glastar, and the Glasair Sportsman. they turned out to be the best resource. So we found a longtime Glastar builder in Florida that I'd known through, he'd put on events at little parties at Sun and Fun and just through the forum. He had a kit that was had quite a bit of the structural work done, but he'd kind of run out of gas. He was getting older, and he didn't think he was ever going to get it done. So it looked like the perfect project, looked like something we could get a hold of and put together pretty quickly. Unfortunately, it was in Florida, so I had to fly back to Tampa and drive over and inspect the plane there, and then get it shipped back once we made a deal. But it wasn't too bad of a deal. So when you're going to buy a kit that somebody else has done part of, there's some really important things like the pre-purchase inspection, because you got this plane that's sort of there, but a lot of it's just spread out all over the place. You're not exactly sure what's done, what isn't done. So it's pretty important to do a thorough pre-purchase inspection and be familiar with the kit. So if you weren't familiar with a plane like the Glastar, for instance, and you wanted to buy one, you would definitely want to try and find somebody to help you out that was familiar with it. The problem is that, missing parts can be hard to find. Not all the parts for the Glastar are available anymore, although most of them are, and they can be expensive. You also need to inspect the quality of the work. Obviously, if there's poor work, that's going to need to be redone. Luckily, I didn't have too much trouble with that. The work that was done on this kit was pretty well done. And then don't forget the builder's log. Someday when you go to register this and get your DAR sign off and all that, somebody's going to ask you about builder's logs. And since you didn't do all of the work, or in this case, I didn't do all of the work, I need to be able to show something about, okay, well, the other people who did do work on this were amateur builders. So I need to be able to make the case from the beginning of the building process to the end that this was amateur built, and that it needs to have some kind of a log. Unfortunately, a lot of times people are a little lax on getting that stuff from. In fact, this is a case where the first owner of the kit died, and then the second owner of the kit got what he could. He got some of the paperwork, but the builder's log was a little thin. There at least were some pictures, and then he took some pictures. So we were able to piece something together. But I talked to other people that they don't have they can't find builder's logs. They can't find invoices. They can't find stuff. Those things can be a problem when you go to register it and to get it signed off. So sometimes it can kill the deal. Anyway, this is a picture of the plane such as it was, the fuselage, and some of the parts that were sitting in his driveway here in Florida. Okay, so paperwork is another big thing. You need an FAA bill of sale from the seller and bills of sale from the previous owners and kit manufacturer. This is a really important thing when you go to register it. If you don't have a chain of custody from the factory to you, then you can expect Oklahoma City to give you a lot of grief. The problem I had is that the original owner had an invoice, but when I turned that into the FAA, they said, this isn't a bill of sale, it's an invoice. We need a bill of sale from Stoddard Hamilton. Well, as luck would have it, I had to be friends with a guy who's was the vice president of Stoddard Hamilton when this kit was sold, and he was willing to sign a bill of sale for me from Stoddard Hamilton to the original owner of the kit. However, it can be a problem. I mean, I was lucky that worked out for me, but now theoretically you can send them a letter and say, hey, Stoddard Hamilton's out of business and la-di-da, and like I say, theoretically they will accept that, but they were giving me a hard time about it. So it's really important to try and get the paperwork if you're going to buy a partially completed project. And as he said before, the builder's logs, get anything you can. Okay, so the plan for this project was to do a kind of a backcountry airplane. So that meant tail dragger, meant extended gear legs for better clearance with a long prop. Decided to go with the T3 tail wheel for rough strips, which is really way better than that old leaf spring that so many tail draggers have. I wanted to go with a fixed composite prop and a carburetor for simplicity and reliability. But I wanted a modern glass panel that at least included basic IFR capability. I wanted to try and keep the weight and the cost under control. So I did a pretty good job of keeping the weight under control. It did maybe not quite as good a job of keeping the cost under control. I think probably about $10,000 over my original budget. But you know, we don't want to spend a lot of time adding up every little tiny thing we bought, because what difference does it make, right? Anyway, this is a picture of the plane. It was complete but unpainted at this point here at Chino. And you can see some of the, the fat tires and the long gear legs. You hard to make out the T3 tail wheel, but anyway, so getting started. Once the truck arrives with your kit, then you got to take everything out, look at it, see if there's any damage. I had one of the windows was broken, got damaged in shipping. So we had a little issue over that, but it got sorted out. You got to get your shop set up, and then you got to start ordering all the parts that you need and removing some of the stuff. We decided to go with Sportsman Flaps, which have a cord that's about 1.5 inches or so longer than the Glastar flaps, and it has a different contour to the bottom surface, which makes the flaps easier to deploy and produces more lift and more drag than the original Glastar flaps. So we need to remove all the old flap tracks and those parts. That was complicated somewhat by the fact that the wings had been closed up. But we managed to work around it without having to pull off the skins, because I really didn't want to do that. The plane came with bladder tanks, but the bladders had been sitting there for, I don't know, 15 years or so. So we pulled the bladders out, sent them to the manufacturer. They went through them, reconditioned them, shipped them back, said they should be good for another 20 years. But that was another thing we had to do. Ordered the gear legs, the wheels, the axles, then ordered the engine and the prop. We were anxious to get everything, because we had this idea that we were going to do all this work that was left to do in about a year. That didn't exactly work out, but that was our thinking. So we wanted to get everything there. So here's the modifications we did. Extended gear legs by 3 inches, give us better ground clearance for the prop, give us a higher angle of attack in the initial ground roll for shorter takeoff. And we decided to go with the smooth 850/6 tires and wheels. These are the tires that Glasair makes. They could have put on 26 inches or bigger ones, but I thought these are fine for banging around the desert in Southern California. And if somebody else, down the road, or if I wanted bigger tires, I can always get them. But this was, at least with the 850s, you don't have so much drag as you do with those really big tires. The T3 tail wheel has a suspension in it, a couple of shock absorbers, coilover shocks that really soak up the bumps. And that everybody I know that has one loves them. So I think it's definitely worth doing, even if you don't do a lot of off airport or rough field type stuff. Okay, we talked about the Sportsman Flaps. There's a couple of people that did this before I did, so I knew that it could be done, and in a sense has become a real popular mod for people to put the big Sportsman Flaps on there, and I would recommend it. And then the last thing we did is added a anti-servo tab to the ailerons which all the Sportsmen come with standard. A lot of people added them to the Glastar, which gives the ailerons a much better feel and roll. And it's pretty easy to do. You can see right there's a picture of the anti-servo tab on the aileron. Some more modifications. I moved the oil cooler from the baffle, the air supply for the oil cooler from the baffles to a NACA scoop on this side. Now, this is the way I'd done my Glastar, and it worked really well. And it doesn't divert any cooling air off the baffles. So we decided to do it again, and it's worked pretty well. So, and then another thing we did is we switched to the Vans type or the RV type air intake, which is a simpler, it's a simpler plumbing system. On the standard Glastar, you have the carburetor, you have an air box, then you have a scat tube that goes up to a side-mounted air cleaner, and a NACA scoop that goes into that. And it's kind of a twisted path for the air. I think the Vans approach is a lot simpler, a lot straighter shot for the air. And it was pretty easy to do. You can buy the snout from Vans, and then you just got to hack it up and stick it on the Glastar cowl. And the last thing we did is put Vortex Generators on the underside of the horizontal stabilizer for better elevator control. At real high angles of attack, the elevator can kind of go weak on you on the Glastar. On the Sportsman, that has about an extra foot of leverage for the tail, it's not a problem. But on the Glastar, it can be an issue. So you just go ahead and put the Vortex Generators on there right away, and it's worked out really well. Some challenges along the way. There's critters that had gotten inside the wings and left like straw and weeds and stuff like that. A couple of spots where there was some urine or something that we had to clean up. So we had kind of made a little hose thing to get the vacuum all the way in there, because it's a little bit tricky to get all the way in. We pretty much got everything out. We had a few parts that had to be redone. Other than we talked about the bladders. That was the only big thing. There was some other small stuff that we fixed, but it was pretty small. There were some small parts missing. One of the biggest boo-boo I made was the seat tracks. You need 4 seat tracks for 2 seats. There was actually only 1 seat track in the kit that I got, and decided to buy 3 more seat tracks. I thought, well, that's no big deal. Then I called Glasair, and he said, yeah, we have those. They're $120 each. So that was sort of, but anyway, they did have them. So luckily they're the same as the Sportsman. So we were able to get them, but it was, didn't expect to spend that much money on it. The flap modification turned out to be a lot harder than we thought. It was just really tough to get in there, and we had to do some real creative work to put on the new flap tracks. Building the flaps themselves was easy. Rigging them wasn't too bad, but getting those new flap tracks in there, and we had to recontour the cove skins. Some of that stuff, it took a lot more time than we thought it would. Another challenge we had was we were doing all the work at the airport, which as a general rule, I don't recommend. But that's where we had all the tools and the facilities. But you know, it just slows you down. I mean, there's so many times where you could have put an hour in, but you know, and it takes an hour to drive to Chino from my house and turn around and come home. So if you have an hour, you don't go to the airport, you go do something else. In fact, even if you have 2 hours, you don't go to the airport, you go do something else. So that kind of slowed down the progress. Of course, the other thing is that, you know, I'm older than I used to be. I don't go as fast. And then my good friend Ed Zaleski, I know many of you in the chapter know him. He worked with me on this all the way through, and we kind of conceived the whole thing together. He passed away before we finished, and that put a real dent in the progress on the project. In fact, I think in about 6 months, I didn't do anything on it at all. It was quite a blow. I'd known Ed since I was in high school. We'd done many things together, built all of the planes that I built together with Ed, and it was tough. Still miss him a lot. Okay, so our engine and prop, we decided to go with the Lycoming, got the factory new Lycoming YO360. I looked at Superior, looked at Continental, ECI, but they're having problems getting parts at that time. So one of the things that drove it was the Lycoming. I mean, I'm sort of partial to Lycoming anyway, but the Lycoming was available. So, and they're all priced within hundreds of dollars of each other. So just pick the Lycoming 0360, 180 horse with the carburetor, slick magnetos, nothing fancy, no electronic ignition, just the old school 180 horse Lycoming. For a prop, we talked to Cato Props and decided to go with a 78-inch diameter by 53-inch pitch composite prop. And they had the prop, the extension, and a carbon fiber spinner. And that whole thing weighs like 16 pounds with everything, compared to the metal Hartzell prop I have on the Sportsman weighs 57 pounds. So it saves a ton of weight. Okay, for the avionics, I wanted to go with something that was, pretty much standard stuff. So I got the Garmin G3X Touch, single screen. Got an IFR approach approved GPS, also by Garmin. I don't have any nav or ILS or any of that capability, all just GPS. I got a single comm radio. The days of feeling like you had to have two comms, I think, are just gone. I mean, you just don't have problems with these radios anymore. The radios I had in my Sportsman have had for 16 years, and they just don't fail. So I thought I just didn't need two comms. Anyway, I have a remote transponder with ADS-B, of course, 2-axis autopilot, which I added later. I originally was gonna do the autopilot, and then my wife was complaining about the cost of the panel, so I took the autopilot out. I took something. I had another G3X screen, took that out, put the iPad in instead. And then when the plane was all done, she says, "Well, how come you don't have an autopilot?" Well, I was trying to save money. So we put the autopilot back in because it's just a really nice thing to have for cross country, and I consider it to be, borderline mandatory for single pilot IFR. So we have the 2-axis autopilot. On the right side there, you see an iPad with ForeFlight pulled up on it. So that's in lieu of a second G3X screen, a lot cheaper. And it's pretty nice. Works. This system, it's sort of bare bones, but it really covers all the bases. It works pretty well. And then we have the G5 backup. So just in case everything else would poop out, you still have a primary flight display. Some of the photos from the building process. One of the things I did is on the engine mount, I decided, because I'd done this before, to put the mount on the engine and then put the engine and mount together in the airplane. So here we're fitting the mount and fitting it to the firewall, make sure everything worked. You don't have to do it that way. Obviously, you can have the mount in the plane and then put the engine on the mount, but I just found that this is just easier to do it this way. The picture on the right is we're in the process of determining the height of the baffles. So you put paper clips on the top of the baffles, set the top cowl on it, and see where you are from the tops of the paper clips. Then you can come down like a 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch, mark the top of the baffle, and get the height of it
right on the money. Now, this is a pretty easy thing to do, and I assume it's a little trick that a lot of other builders have used. But anyway, this just shows that. Here I have a long drill bit. I'm using it to drill out rivets on the root rib, so I can get the bladders out. Those are really difficult to get in there. You can't really get a straight shot on a lot of them. So there's a certain amount of disagreeable language that's potentially involved in this process. Here on the right, I rigged up a little bracket here with a flashlight. So I found that I needed 2 hands to do the work inside the wing, and I just didn't have a third hand. So this worked out pretty well. Sometimes you just have to get creative. Here on the left, we had to recontour the cove ribs. I thought that the new flaps would just fit into the coves, just like the Glastar flaps did, and that was wrong. So we put the flaps on, installed them, cycled them, and they just weren't. It just wasn't clearing. So I had to go through and reshape all the cove ribs and reinstall the cove skins to conform with the flaps, which happen to have a larger, the larger leading edge. On the right here, we have decided to do a Zolatone on the inside of the fiberglass fuselage instead of applying, you know, a leather or vinyl or something upholstery cover. Save weight. It actually looks pretty good when it's done, but with all these cage tubes that are in there, it's kind of a pain in the rear end to do the painting. So we did cover a lot of the cage tubes with aluminum foil and tape, and then we could go in and spray and mask the windows, so then we could go and spray. So the aluminum foil came in real handy for working all these tubes. You just kind of crimp it around the tube, and it's easier than masking it with tape. So that's what you see here. Okay, this is Ed working on one of the flaps, one of the Sportsman type flaps that we built. We had just bought the parts from Glasair and built the flaps ourselves. It wasn't very hard to do. On the right here, we got some of our airport buddies helping us set the one of the wings in place. We found that if we attach the strut to the wing first and then move the whole thing together as an assembly, that seemed to work better than trying to set the wing, brace it up, and then install a strut. Anyway, so we had plenty of help, so that's what we did. Put the ELT in the back. Had to make a ground plane for the antenna that bridge over the cables, so that's what that's showing there. And then the box to the foreground of that photo is the box with a remote transponder. You see some wires going every which way. That all had to get tidied up before we could close everything up. Then on the right, you see the panel installation in progress with wires from the panel comes out to you with a Cannon plugs, and then they have the parts to make up the other end of the Cannon plugs, and then you take all the wires from the airplane, which is fuel pump, nav lights, landing lights, whatever's out there, and then you have to bring all that stuff to the panel, cut it to length, and make up the other end of the Cannon plug. So what initially do is you just bring all the wires forward and just make sure they're long enough, let them run wild there, label everything, and then once you've pulled all the wires, then you can go back and start making up the Cannon plugs. Here's the panel. So this is the panel I ended up with, which I'm pretty happy with. Aerotronics out of Billings did this for me. They did a real nice job. There's on the upper left, you see Ed fitting the panel. It's pretty much dropped into place. We had to do a little
massaging of it on the sides there. Okay, so once the plane is done, because we were at Chino, and I decided not to use the paint shop at Chino, we got kind of stuck with making the first flight without paint, which is another thing that I generally recommend against. I like to have the plane finished and then go fly it. Now I know not everybody agrees with that, and that's fine. But it's pretty easy to, you get the plane done and you go out and fly it, and then somehow it takes you 2 years to get the paint on there, and that's not something I like. Anyway, so we did the first flight without paint. First flight went pretty well, except I had a little trouble getting used to the fixed pitch prop. Because every time you put the nose down, the engine RPM goes up, which of course I know, right? I mean, because I learned with a fixed pitch prop, but it had been a long time and I just kind of wasn't used to it. So, I push the nose down, and then I'm running over 2,700 RPMs, and I got to pull it back. And so it was a little bit of horsing around. The engine ran a little bit hot too on the first flight. So, that always seems to be hectic, the first flight. I don't know, even though we plan it and everything, it still seems to be a little bit hectic. Richard Eastman flew with me as a qualified additional pilot. If any of you are thinking of that, there's a advisory circular AC 90-116 that explains that whole process to you of using an additional pilot during phase 1. Because under the operating limitations, you're not allowed to have anybody with you during phase 1, except if you use this AC 90-116 and comply with its requirements. So Richard Eastman easily met those requirements, so he flew with me, and it's just nice to have somebody else there. Plus, he's got a ton of experience in Glastars and Sportsman, so it's a welcome addition. Okay, so this is it. It's done, or it looks done. So although I've been screwing around with it for a year, I just figured out that it's time for the condition inspection, and I'm still tinkering with some things, but I pretty much got it done now. But I'm pretty happy how it turned out. I think it looks good. The people at Corona Air Paint did the paint job for me. And I think it turned out pretty good, if I do say so myself. So here's just some basic specs. Gross weight, 2,000 pounds. Empty weight come out 1256. That's not the lightest Glastar ever built, but it's pretty good. A lot of them are over 1,300. The first Glastar I built was over 1,300, owing a lot to that heavy prop. The downside of the backcountry configuration and the climb prop is that I'm stuck with a maximum 75% power cruise speed of 124 knots. Now this is a good 11, 12 knots slower than if I would have gone with a constant speed prop and some smaller tires and wheels. In fact, maybe even just 15, 16 knots slower. But it gets off the ground pretty quick, and I have a power off full flap stall speed of 34 knots. So this thing will land short. In fact, the problem I have is when we try to do 3-point landings, you've got to get this thing slowed down. I just have a tendency to come in too fast and then bounce it. But it'll land slow. So we projected the build time to be a year. It actually took 3 years. But we thought, all the structural work's, most of the structural work's done. How long could it take? Well, longer than we thought. So questions, comments, anything? I'm not hearing any questions.
Hey,
Rick?
Are you a local DAR?
Yeah, I work out of the Los Angeles MIDO, so I can cover Western United States. As a practical matter, I do Southern California.
Nice. So I might meet you soon. We'll see.
Good.
Maybe it'll take 3 years. I'm not sure.
But Hawaii is also in my area, so if you know anybody needs a DR in Hawaii, you know, I'm available.
Folks in Hawaii. One more
Yeah.
question. I'm curious about the paint. I thought you had mentioned that you decided not to use the paint shop in Corona
Yeah.
or Chino,
Yes.
but and then you mentioned that you did have Corona.
Yeah, I use Corona air paint, and I thought they did a really good job. They had a good price. They were about $5,000 less than the guys in Chino, and I
Okay,
just
Corona.
didn't have that much confidence in the Chino guys. They're basically they have an upholstery shop on the field, and they bought the paint shop, and so they know a lot about upholstery. I don't know how much they know about paint, but between that and there being a lot more money, I decided, yeah, I'd go to Corona. And I'm not sorry I did. They did a nice job and they had a good
Good
price.
job. Beautiful.
Thanks.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, hey
Hey,
Dave,
Dave.
how you doing? It's Bob
Good.
Arthur. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just happened to come by your plane I don't know, a couple of weeks ago down in Corona. I don't know if you just got it painted in Corona or it's been painted for a long time. But
It's
it was
been
sitting
painted for a little while, but I had them do some touch up for me.
okay, yeah, I'm building my plane in Corona, and I just happened to be driving by and I saw this Glastar sitting there and it looked beautiful. So I stopped and took some pictures and I saw the plate on it and said it was your plane. And so anyway,
Yeah.
everybody else on the webinar here, they did a great job. His plane looks beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I'm real pleased. So anybody who's looking for a paint shop, I would recommend them. They're pretty busy too, so you know, don't wait till the last second to sign up. So how far along are you on your plane?
I bought it as a partially built plane. All the tail was finished. The ailerons and the flaps were finished. The horizontal, the whole tail horizontal was finished. The rudder rudder was finished. The elevators are finished. The flaps and ailerons are finished. The fuselage had been connected to the frame, and that's about it. And so that's where I'm at with that. So
Okay.
the fuselage is connected to the frame. I put the gear legs on it so that I could roll it around instead of carry it around.
Sure.
So it's rolling around.
Okay.
And I'm building the wings right now. The spars are done. So there's no skins on it yet. So when I got it, some of the skins had been up drilled, but not all the way. So that's where I'm at. None of the internals on the wings have been
Okay.
put in yet. So I'm building wings. I still have to do bulkheads.
You got a ways to go.
Yeah, I still got to do a few of the bulkheads in there.
Okay.
I think 2 of the bulkheads are done.
Okay. Good. Well, if you need a tech counselor visit sometime, give me a ring and come by and take a look at it.
Yeah, I definitely need that. I'll need you to take a look at the wings before I close those things up.
Okay. Good.
Dave, there's a couple questions came up here in the chat line. One is, what's the common price for an unfinished Glasair kit?
You can usually find them for, I mean, it depends on what they include, but assuming they don't include things like an engine and prop and avionics, if you're just talking about the kit, range would be 20 to 25,000 is what I've seen. And some of that's going to just depend on condition, but certainly I think for 25, you should be able to find a decent kit that's,
Okay.
that you could start in on.
Another question here is, how many times did you put the wings and control surfaces on and off and on and off and on and off?
A few. I don't know. The wings didn't come off really. I don't know if I ever took them. Well, yeah, I fitted them and then we took them off. We hung them up so that because they were just in the way, and then we put them back on again. So they were only off and on a couple of times. The control surfaces, quite a few times. I had a lot of trouble with the ailerons or some internal threads. Some nut plates that I had a lot of trouble with and had to, you couldn't get bolts started in them and stuff, take them apart. And so that took quite a few times. The flaps, you could say the cove skins that I thought were going to fit, they just didn't fit. And then so the flaps had to come off, had to redo the cove skins. And so they were, flaps were off and on a few times. But that's just part of the process.
Okay. Here's another question. Any concerns going forward with parts availability since Glasair has paused?
Yeah, I don't know. They're still there. And they have some kits available for sale. They've priced them at an absurdly high number, but they're still there. They're still selling parts. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it is a concern in the long run. Problem is they have a Chinese owner, and then the Chinese told them that they couldn't take any more money out of China and invest it in the US. So the flow of the money from China has stopped, and they're having to kind of make it on their own. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay. Here's another question. It says, did you have interference between the flap guides and aileron skin / doubler interface? What did you do if so?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what we're driving at there.
Okay. Did you have interference between the flap guides and the aileron skin / doubler interface?
No, I don't think so, if I understand it right. The cable guides, no, the internal cable guides, I didn't have a problem with that.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, I don't know. This came from Phil Martineau. So if he wants to
Okay.
turn on his audio and chime in, he can clarify that maybe.
Dave, I got a quick question if I could jump in.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Kyle. I'm building a Sportsman out here in Western Colorado, and
Oh, good. Okay.
Your third or fourth slide hit on something I'm working on right now, where you had an issue with the paperwork because all you had was an invoice for the fuselage, and you were able to get an 8052 or 80, I forget the bill of sale number.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have that memorized, but I forget.
Yeah,
I think it's 8050-2, I think.
Yes, 8050-2. And
yeah.
so I'm in the same boat. I've been dealing with the FAA now for 5 months, and I'm about ready to get my plane to a DAR here in another couple months. I mean, will the FAA not accept the invoice from the fuselage? Is that what you ran into as well?
Yeah, they weren't happy about now, did you buy the kit from Glasair, or you bought it from somebody else?
No, I've got chain of custody all the way back to, I'm the third owner of the fuselage, and I got chain of custody all the way back with bill of sales, except for Glasair, because they don't issue bill of sales. They just give an invoice, and the FAA doesn't.
Oh, they should give you a bill of sale.
Okay.
Now, I would call up Glasshair and tell them, you know, I'm getting ready to register this. I need a bill of sale. And if they just won't do it, give me a call, because I'm most likely you can get Ted Setzer to sign an FAA bill of sale for you.
Okay, I appreciate that insight.
Because he's a corporate officer, so I think he's having to do this for some other people too. But Glasshair should do it. I can't think of why not. They gave me grief because on the Glastar, because they said, hey, look, the Glastar, that's Stoddard Hamilton. That kit was not sold by this company, and they didn't want to sign it. So I had to get somebody that was an officer to sign it, who was an officer when it was Stoddard Hamilton. And he didn't care. He did it.
Okay. Thanks for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Okay, sure. But ask them first, and if they give you grief, then let me know.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, David, it's Bob Arthur again. I've got a quick question for you regarding the builder's log. And I don't really have a builder's log, you know, at the spot that I'm at with, you know, acquiring the kit. But it looks to be that it's not too much different than what a fast build kit would be. What would be kind of your suggestions to work backwards a little bit and kind of establish a builder's log? Previously, the the person I bought it from had passed away, and I bought it from his son, who's a
Okay.
friend of mine. So he got me a bill of sale from him. He had power of attorney for his father, and
Okay.
he got me a bill of sale. So the chain of ownership looks good. But as far as the builder's log,
Did they have any pictures or anything?
no, he didn't have any pictures at all. And he gave me a builder's log, but as I looking through it, it kind of looks like it's a builder's log for someone else's Glastar, and not his.
Okay.
Because it goes past the spot where I bought it at. There's more work done than what I got. So I'm like, well, okay, it's got to be somebody else's.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, you can just put a statement in there and then try and create, keep a good record going forward.
I do.
Even if he has 2 or 3 pictures of the thing under construction and a couple of key dates or anything like that, anything you can recreate would be helpful. But just make sure you have pictures and notes going forward best you can.
I do. I took pictures of everything,
Yeah, you
when
should
I
be
bought it,
okay.
moving forward,
Yeah.
what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, the other thing I would recommend is that when it comes time to get your repairman certificate, especially go to the Long Beach FSDO instead of the Riverside FSDO.
Okay.
They're just easier people to get along with.
Okay. Good to know. I've got another question for you about
Mhm.
about engines, and I don't know if you have any experience with the UL engines.
No, I don't.
Okay, then we won't even ask.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of alternate engines as a general rule. The Cub I had a Jabiru engine in it, and it looked really good on paper, and it looked really good in person, and it turned out to be just a lump of poop.
Got it. Good to know. Yeah.
It just didn't live up to the promises they made. So I don't know. I know that I see it UL engines at Oshkosh. I hear people talking about them. But the other thing is you're kind of on your own because they don't. Nobody makes an engine mount for it for the Glastar or the Sportsman. You have to kind of figure stuff out yourself. You may or may not get it to work with the factory cowl. So those are things you can take into consideration. You doing a Sportsman?
No, I've got an original Glastar.
You have a Glastar, okay.
It's back from the oh gosh, I think it's 1997.
Yeah, my kit was pretty old. I think it's kit number 5062, so it was pretty old.
Yeah, mine's kind of old too. With your 0360, how's it feel as far as weight and balance and flying and stuff? Does it feel a little nose heavy, or is it pretty good?
No, especially not with the composite prop. No, it has a good feel to it. No, I wouldn't hesitate to do it that way again. I thought it turned out great. All my, I'm well in the middle of the envelope. I'm not, with everything. So I think it's a good choice. You get the power, and it's, it's only what 10, 15 pounds heavier than the 320. So I think most people have gone with the 360.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Yeah, I just put an 0360 in a lightweight prop.
Yeah, that'd be my suggestion.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Dave, there's a couple more here on the chat line. A
Okay.
couple more questions on the chat line. Where does one source the extended gear legs?
The Glasair machine, the guys that make the original Glastar and Sportsman gear legs will make those custom gear legs for you.
Okay.
So if it's Langair, Langair machine, and you just Google them and you should be able to find them.
Okay. And there was another question here. It said, how long did it take Corona Paint to complete your Glasair?
I think they took them about a month. It might have run 5 weeks, something in the 4 or 5 week range.
Okay.
So that's about, I think you're going to get anybody to do it in less than 4 weeks.
Okay. Here's another one here from Phil Martineau. He says, are you willing to share your contact number or email? I'm building a Glastar here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
That I'm the 5th owner of and would like to be able to contact you.
Yeah, I should have put that on there. I'm sorry. Yeah, my email is like my name, Dave, DAVE @ PRIZIO.com. And my phone number is 714-336-8449. Just be aware that I'm in California, not in Minnesota. So, you know, there's a 2-hour time difference.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, and one last thing, it's for sale. Anybody wants to buy it, it's available.
Go
So
on, divulge your price, Dave.
I'm asking 119 for it.
Okay.
So it's got 50 hours total time on it. So I just put it on the Glasair Aviation forum site today. So
Okay.
I can't have 2 planes. It's not, you just can't
Okay.
fly 2 planes.
Okay. The other one you have is also a glass
The
Star?
Sportsman. It's a Sportsman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Sportsman. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's another one from Richard Cookson. I think he says, pass my thanks along to Dave for his presentation. I'm a Sportsman kit builder located in Canterbury, New Zealand. All the best and thank you.
Oh, well, good luck with that. And you know, it's a lot of beautiful country to fly over down there, but I know that getting parts can be require patience, shall we say? You know, I mean, instead of a 20-minute drive to Aircraft Spruce is like you put your order in and 3 or 4 weeks later the parts show up. Huh?
Yeah.
At least that's what I've been told.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky here to have Aircraft Spruce right next door. You know, you just
Oh,
drive down the
yes.
road and yeah,
We're so spoiled.
yeah.
We have no idea. Okay.
So are there any other questions? You guys can unmute yourselves and pipe up if you got some more questions.
Hey, where did you send that panel out to get it completed? You said
The Aerotronics in Billings, Montana did the panel for me, and they're at AirVenture and Sun and Fun every year. Got their name. Jason Smith is the guy that does that. I talked to him last week, and he says he's out 18 months on panels right now because partly because they're just busy, and partly because they're not getting stuff from Garmin. You know, with this chip shortage, the parts are just dribbling in from Garmin, so they're way backed up. But that's I mean, you know, I don't know how far you are away from needing a panel, but you might want to get your name on the list if you know, you're out of ways. The other thing I would say about panels is that don't put the panel in till you're pretty sure, you know, you can see the home stretch. As a DAR, I signed one guy's plane off who he was having trouble with the engine. He was trying to do something kind of unusual with the engine, and so he decided to just go ahead and build the panel and all the avionics and stuff. And the engine thing turned into like a 12-year nightmare. And by the time the plane was ready to sign off, I mean, the panel was obsolete. I mean, that's extreme, but you know, the panel stuff's changing pretty quickly. So you definitely don't want to get way out ahead of yourself on ordering that. But that said, the people, I mean, I'm sure Stein Air, Aerotronics, these guys are really backed up right now. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, or are there?
Any other questions from anybody there? Well, if not, let me thank Dave for this great presentation. This is really good, and I think the Glasshair guys are going to love it when they get it on recording too, and they can.
Oh, that's
listen
great.
to it over and over and over and get the details.
Well, thanks for attending. I appreciate it, and I give you my contact information, so you know, feel free to call me or email me, or text me. You know, if you have a question or something. You know, obviously emails and texts are easier than phone calls because I'm not always available to take a phone call, but you know, I would answer your questions, get back to you as soon as I can.
Yeah, I think you know, the other thing to point out is that Dave is a tech counselor for our chapter, so he doesn't just do the AR things. He's also a tech counselor. He's willing to come out and look at your airplane and give you suggestions and look it over any time during your build, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind doing that at all. I like doing it. So I've got a tech counselor visit tomorrow, at Corona Airport, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's amazing how many people are looking to build airplanes. We've got some new members this year and last year who have just popped out of the woodwork, and they've ordered a kit from somebody, and they're going to be building airplanes. So it's just
I know that the kit guys are, their sales have been pretty strong. Vans has had good sales, and of course everybody's clamoring to see what the RV-15 is going to look like. RANS, RANS, that makes a plane, a kit that is what people think the Vans RV-15 will look like. Their RANS S21, they're out over a year on deliveries on those, and I think a lot of the other manufacturers are doing real well. So people are getting interested in this. So
yeah.
Pardon me, Dave.
yes.
That's what I'm building, a RANS S21.
Oh, great! Good for you.
Yeah, I'm actually, it's coming the end of this month, and I'm going out there Thursday for the fly-in barbecue and do a little bit of backcountry flying in Kansas. If you can imagine backcountry flying in Kansas, I'm not really sure how that's going to be, but
It's kind of flat, but it's still fun.
there's supposed to be some good rivers and
Yeah.
it should be fun. Anyway, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do a tricycle gear or conventional gear. I'm still working on my pilot's license or certificate, and I wanted to know what city are you located in? Like how far away? I'm in Aliso Viejo, so.
Oh, I live in Tustin, so Aliso Viejo is no problem. Once you get started, if you'd like me to come down, be glad to.
Absolutely. That's all I
Sure.
have.
Yeah, that S21 is a nice plane. I've flown a couple of versions of different engines, and it's a nice plane. I'm good for you. I don't think you'll be
Awesome.
disappointed.
I don't think so. Thank you. Great presentation.
All right, thanks. All right.
Yeah, I think
Hey,
that's
y'all,
it.
this is Will Moore with Chapter 724 over in
ahead.
Maryland, Florida. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the presentation. And one small silver lining to come out of all of COVID is that it does allow you in California to share with us on the East Coast a lot more easily than we otherwise would have before.
Yeah, that's
Thanks again.
true. Great. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you again, Dave. We had a peak of about 42 participants, but I think we had more than that because there were a couple names that popped up and then they disappeared later. So I think we were doing really
Good.
well. Yeah.
Dave,
Good.
Again, thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Dave, quick question for you if you can hear me.
Sure. Yeah.
I put it in the chat. I don't know if you answered it. I apologize. I was on another phone call, but the one that was partially built. So is the rule still applied that the partially built by somebody else has to be no more than 49%, in order to satisfy
Well,
the 50?
It's the overall construction that has to be, majority amateur built. So if they used some commercial assistance, then you have to factor that in to the total. So they don't have to do majority amateur built and then your majority amateur built. It's the aggregate of everything that has to end up so-called 51%.
Okay, so they and you combined can make up the 50%, not just you.
Right.
So it's not like that they can do no more than 49.
No.
They can have 40 of it. And you can finish the rest.
And you can have lots of different people work on it as long as it's amateur built. There's no limit to how many people can do it. So yeah, it's not it unless they did a lot of professional help on it, then you're probably fine. But if they had a lot of professional help, it's worth asking the question because you may want to go through the calculation and make sure you're not going to be in trouble. But
now, how does it figure into the whole idea that in the more recent determination that you can't call it like an RV6, you have to call it as Dave's RV6 or Dave's whatever?
Well, you're the manufacturer, so yeah, you can't say the manufacturer is Vans. The manufacturer is you.
Yes.
So that hasn't changed. So my plane is a Prizio David P. Glastar.
Okay, makes sense. It's just no different than even in the manufactured world where you have stuff that's licensed for other people to build, like the Legend Cup, the Piper Cup. it's a Cub,
Right.
but it's not a Piper Cub anymore. Legend is the one that built
So
it.
yeah, it's a Legend Cub, but of course, if you built it, when I built mine, it was a Prizio Legend Cub.
Sure, it's the same concept extended to the amateur home build. Well,
Yeah.
you're now Legend or whatever.
You're the manufacturer.
Yes. Okay, it makes sense. Got it. Thank you.
All right.
So Dave, from the standpoint of becoming the guy who can maintain the airplane, is there a certain
Mhm.
percentage of the work you need to do to be able to get that title?
It just has to be majority amateur builds, and you have to be one of the builders.
Okay, just a question of who it is. You just pick one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of planes have multiple builders.
Okay.
But you know, if you did the majority of the work, that's a good thing, but it's not necessarily a requirement.
Okay.
But you
So
should
the
have done
question-
enough work to know how to take care of the plane.
There's a question here, how to watch the presentation later. We're recording the presentation and we're going to do some cleanup editing on it and pass it along to Omar at the Glasair Owners Group. And I don't know exactly what he'll do with it. Maybe he'll put it up on our website. I'm not sure, but that we don't have any independent access through the chapter for that presentation later on. We just we're going to pass it on to those guys to use.
Okay. Is it hard to put up on YouTube? I don't have any idea.
I don't know either. We might be able to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have a clue how you would do it, but
I think Steve knows how to do that. So we'll talk to Steve and see
Okay.
what he says.
great.
We might do that. But
Because
as a general rule, you know, these Zoom presentations we've been having, we've recorded some of them, but we have not, in general, put them up on any place where it can be viewed later. So some organizations do that. We just haven't. But
okay,
we're going to pass this one along so the Glasshair guys can do it.
great.
I-
All right.
This is Omar. I'll take the presentation and post it on our website at glassairowners.com, so it'll be public.
Okay. I
Okay.
guess you're building a Glastar too, are you, Omar?
That's right, yeah.
I saw that on your website. So
I got to talk to you about how I get pictures stuck up there with my ad. I couldn't see how to do it.
I'll just drag and drop.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go back and do that then. All right.
good.
Okay. Well, I'll sign off, I guess, if we don't have anything else. All right. Good night, guys.
Hey,
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Awesome presentation, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.